All right, let's bring in Chuck Walters. Chuck, you got the chatter, something that you did a while ago. If you have, although by the way, if you have YouTube going on another browser or something like that, if you could mute that, that'd be awesome. I don't know if you do. If you don't, that's just all right. You did good. Love you, Chuck. All right, here's the thing. Chuck Walters has a childhood buddy that he started something called the Chatter, and I listened to the first episode, and quite frankly, it's just funny. I mean, it's funny. If you like humor, if you like being entertained, you listen to the Chatter. Did I give that a decent intro, Chuck?
Wonderful intro. It's where sports and comedy collide for a whole bunch of chatter. We go on our tangents and talk about nothing at some points, but we're also having on great guests. Yesterday we had on, we taped it, Evan Romansky, who's a Sycamore guy, huge Bearcats fan, loves the Bengals. He was actually at the Reds game at Angel Stadium the other day, and he is the screenwriter of the show Ratched, which is on Netflix. If you've seen it, it follows the life of Nurse Ratched. And we talked to him about being on the picket lines. We pitched him a movie script. We talked to him about how difficult it is to break into that industry. I got a response from someone that I produced his show, Sean Salisbury. I'm sure you know him, that he wants to come on potentially. Lorenzo Neal, the five-time Pro Bowler, the former Cincinnati Bengal. I did a post-game show with him. He wants to come on. So we're just trying to get interesting guests in whatever field they may be, sports or not, and entertain you. I had a buddy that texted me yesterday on his way into work, and he said, I was laughing out loud in traffic. That's what we want. We want people driving in at 8 a.m. if they're having a horrible day to turn it on and just enjoy the show.
Well, I think my favorite segment was Houdini. You could shine some light on Houdini is here in a second, but my favorite part was Houdini's dad decided he was going to go and live a farm life. That was my favorite segment. I got to be honest. I know there was other parts of that maybe people enjoyed more than Houdini's dad segment, but that was a funny little bit there. Had me laughing out loud. I guess in general terms, if you don't mind, share with the audience who Houdini is and kind of where that conversation went.
Yeah, his dad Tim is a lot like Houdini in that sense. He's a West Sider. He went to Elder, and I'm an East Sider. And growing up in Cincinnati, there was always that West Side toughness. And I didn't really know him because social media wasn't the same way that it is now until we got to senior year of high school and college, whatever it may be. But he's an absolute clown. He's got the tats. He looks pretty tough. He doesn't smile a whole ton. He's just kind of stoic. But you get him going, and he is hysterical. And I found that out pretty early. And so his girlfriend, myself, all his friends, we've been trying to get him to do stand-up for forever. And this was kind of the first step of putting him out there. He started it in 2018. Honestly, when we were doing this for the first time in 2018, I was working at Lexington, and I think I had just started doing some minor league previews for Reds Live at the time. And Houdini would drop some F-bombs and cuss a little on the podcast. And I was like, I can't have this, Houdini. I'm a company man. I'm a company man. I can't have you saying that. And then after 5-6 years of the industry and watching Big Cat and PFT and Pat McAfee and Joe Rogan and all these guys get in the bag, I said, forget being a company man. Say whatever you want, Hudson. Just be funny. Let's be authentic. Let's have a good time. Let's talk sports when sports are applicable. If it's 4 minutes of Joe Buck's awkward handshake, we're going to talk about that because there wasn't a lot going on the other day. But NFL season, it gives you content, and we're just here to break it down, man.
All right, so you're also gonna lead up something called Chatterbox Bearcats. I think that's the term that we ended up coining because at some point this show, and by show I mean this company's become very, very non-creative because of whatever reason, YouTube and their algorithms. Heaven forbid you change anything. Shout out Locked On for that. I don't mean to bring up any competitors on the program, but it seems like they've somehow found a way to dominate the world with their podcast. No offense, but their podcasts aren't all that great, but they got a billion of them. They're all called the same thing. So here comes Chatterbox trying to do the same thing to a slight extent. You're a big Bearcat guy. Houdini's a big Bearcat guy. You guys are going to do something similar, I guess similar. What's the plan here behind Chatterbox Bearcats?
I don't think it'll be as X's and O's based, and I'll break it down. That's my background. I've been in sports. I've done post-game shows. I've had to break it down, so I can dabble in that. But we're versatile. I don't think Houdini's planning on getting too much into the box score and saying, oh, we got 16 points from Aziz Bandango here. Oh, Emory Jones, 15 of 21. I didn't like that check down that he had in the second quarter. He should have gone to the flat. I don't expect Houdini to say a ton of that. But we're just going to talk Bearcats as if we're in the local bar, if we're in the Mount Lookout Tavern, which was our old stomping grounds back in the day. I'm based in Chicago now, so it's been a minute. I think it's been since the renovation of Mount Lookout Tavern. But all the viewers, hopefully, even if you're drinking an O'Doul's, all are welcome. We're just going to talk to you as if we're at the local bar and we tuned into the game. We're going to break it down and have some fun. That's really the only plan with Chatterbox Bearcats. Post-game shows and then a weekly podcast. We're more basketball guys, to be honest with you, and it's been tougher to get into football aside from the last 3-4 years of Fickle. But through the Tuberville era, and once they made the switch to the American, it was East Carolina and Tulsa and let's go with South Florida and back-to-back weeks. It's a little tougher when your team's just 7-5 to get really into it. But Luke Fickell making it to the playoffs, and the team that they had last year that was pretty solid despite the loss to Louisville, and now the transition to the Big 12, I'm all in. I was a season ticket holder in 2009. I was at the Pittsburgh game where the fans ran onto the field too early, and they're like, no, Dave Wanstadt's like, get him off the field. The game's not over yet. And then we stormed the field after that, and then I was at the Syracuse game the next week where we were all chucking oranges on the field. So I go way back with the Cats. Don't get me wrong. I'm just more of a basketball expert. I mean, I could tell you every single player, every single number that they've worn for the last 20 years. If you want to get into Hernal Hall talk and his ineligibility, I can go back into the well. If you want to talk Chad Moore, I'll talk some Chad Moore with you. Football, it's not quite the same way. I mean, I know Digger Bujnak, if we want to get deep into the weeds, I can pull out the Marty Gilliards of the world, the Marcus Barnetts who made the transition, the Demetrius Jones, who was a quarterback in transition to safety. So with all that being said, I think I know my Bearcats, Trace. I think I know my Bearcats, and I'm excited to talk Bearcats with the people. Bring energy and bring as much knowledge as I have.
Speaking of the Bearcats, this is going to be one of the few years, I guess, I would venture to say that Satterfield's going to be in a position where the expectations are going to be really low. Obviously, you move into the Big 12. You're in a university like Cincinnati. You got resources now to a certain extent. Clearly, not to the extent of the Oklahoma States of the world, of course. But that's beside the point. Do you think that this season has a chance to surprise anybody, or it kind of is what it is? There's going to be some lumps along the way. What's your gut reaction telling you with that?
I think so, man. The proof is in the pudding is always a tale that I've heard, or a phrase that I've heard. I say the tail is in the tapioca. And you go back to what Scott Satterfield did at Louisville in his first season. I was working at LEX 18 in Lexington at the time, so covering Kentucky, so I was very familiar with what Louisville was doing, and they were coming off the heels of Bobby Petrino's mess. They brought back Bobby, and the card said, we are back, and they weren't back. Instead, Petrino was out, and the team absolutely sucked. With that being said, Satterfield comes in. Everyone's pretty excited about the hire because he did great things at Appalachian State in their transition from 1AA to Division I, or FCS, whatever we call it nowadays. And so he comes in, Satterfield, right away. I think he won seven games. He was ACC Coach of the Year. He was big time. Everyone was fired up about him. He brought in good recruits. He was very adaptable to the NIL and getting guys in cars for pictures and holding up the money sign or whatever it may be that gets these kids excited nowadays. And he was great. But year two, just kind of the same. Year three, same. And then they were built the same way. The team, terms of they love to run the ball on third and long consistently. They were they were running on 3rd and 12, and everyone was getting upset that they weren't hurling it around, but that they had a dual threat quarterback like they're going to have this year with Emory Jones. But they were good on the edges, one of the best pressuring teams in the country, and every year they were consistently decent at the very least. And Satterfield jumped for a reason. I mean, he still had time left on his contract. Some people had the pitchforks, but they weren't taking his contract away. That money was guaranteed, at least for next year. So he saw something in the Bearcats and left, brought in a ton of transfers. So it's really hard to gauge, like, hey, this guy from Utah State that was good at Utah State, is he going to transfer or is he going to convert to the Big 12? Emory Jones, who had one good season at Florida and then went to Arizona State and lost his job under Herm Edwards, is he going to bounce back and be good? I don't know. But I do think there's hope there where everyone says, this team's going to suck. If they were going to suck, I wouldn't be doing Chatterbox Cats because that would be a waste of a Saturday, right?
Yeah, I think
they're going to be good.
Is a very well articulated message on Satterfield. You just never know, right? I mean, some guys can go to certain schools and have success, and then there might be other schools where they would be a complete failure. Until you're put in the specific job at that specific time, it's hard to say whether or not Satterfield's going to have success. And the good news is they play games on the field, and we get to find out together. Moving forward, though, another guy that everybody was super excited about when he came in, Wes Miller. Kind of, if anything, he kind of won the press conference. He was going around on the tour. Wes Miller is the guy. He's been the guy. Hasn't had a ton of success quite yet, but one could argue there's very valid reasons as to why. Moving into the Big 12 now, the best basketball conference in America. What is your take or what is your thought process on Wes? Do you think the seat could get hot at all, or is this a situation where he needs some time? Your overall state of the program with the UC Bearcat basketball team.
I loved how he just came in right away and said he knew the buzzwords. He said, "I'm going to kick Xavier's butt. We're gonna go into Cintas and we're gonna kick their behinds." How about the alumni team? How about the Nasty Natty going into Cintas and taking down Zip 'em Up? I think that's what Wes was talking about. In regards to let's go with a letter grade first of all. I'd give him a C-. Now, it's not going to be a D+ just because of the way that he's recruited. Now, recruiting means nothing on the floor until we actually see these guys out there. But I believe enough in Rayvon Griffith and Jizzle James, Day Thomas, and all these players that they brought in. Dan Skillings, I love too, to where I think they're going to take the corner. And we'll put him at a C- right now with potential of being a B by conference play because I like Wes a lot. Here's the deal that I've had. He struck out last year. I think he knows it. The staff knows it. They brought in players like Rob Phinisee. I know he got hurt, but they brought in Rob Phinisee. They brought in Kalu Ezikpe, two guys that did not help you whatsoever. And Ezikpe is the one that hurts because they needed bigs. They were getting destroyed down low. Every time they play Houston, they lose by about 20 boards on the glass. I mean, Houston was just horrible for the longest time. I grew up with Houston in the Conference USA, and it was a free pass. You know, you put the check mark on the schedule before you even 2 weeks before you even got to the game. Now Houston's just kicking the Bearcats' ass. It does not feel good at all. But he can turn it around this year if one of these two guys is healthy. Aziz Bandaogo, transfer from Utah Valley, that killed him in the NIT last year, and he's legit. I think he's NBA type talent. He's a star. And then this other guy, Jameel Reynolds from Temple, who was pretty good against the Cats too, puts up good numbers, and he's a big body that they need. If those two are ineligible for some reason, the NCAA, who doesn't seem to care about anything anymore, they say, no, we're not going to give Bandaogo his waiver for mental health because he wants to move back closer to home. That's not going to happen. Jameel Reynolds, forget that you were with McKee and he left. We're not granting you a waiver. If they're missing both those guys, it's back to Odi Oguama and Victor Larkin down low in the Big 12 going into the fog. Now, Odi looks good. It looks like he hits the weights this offseason. I like Victor. I think he's going to be a good player. But do you trust those two entering the Big 12 where your off day is a road trip to West Virginia? No. You need Bandaogo. You need CJ Frederick to be healthy. You need some of these freshmen to at least step up. You need Skillings to be a star. They need a lot of things to be good. I think a lot of those things will happen. Now, maybe it's John Newman's incredible defensively, and he scores 7-8 points, and no one's even saying John Newman's name, and he helps to them being a good team. Or maybe it's Jizzle James averages 15 points, and he's one of the best freshmen in the country. They need a multitude of different things because as of right now, I think you could point at their roster and say, all right, who is the best player on this team? And there's like 6 or 7 guys that you could potentially choose from. I don't think there's a clear-cut slam dunk. Maybe it's Aziz if he's eligible, but there doesn't seem to be that like slam dunk, and that can be a good thing because you spread the wealth and you have a team that has a bunch of guys that average 10, 11 points, whatever they may be. But I like a team that has a bona fide star, a Jaron Cumberland, a Sean Kilpatrick, a Steve Logan. The best Bearcats teams over the years had a bona fide star. Who's that going to be for this year's team? I don't know.
Well, one guy we mentioned before, to circle back here on situations that can happen. You can be great in one place and not great in another. CJ Fredick, a local kid, you could make the argument that just has kind of had a little bit of a rough start to his college career, bounced around. Obviously was at Kentucky. That didn't work out. Finds himself in a UC uniform. He might be that guy. I think CJ Frederick's a guy that can be really good. Did you get much of a chance to see him play at the high school level? And if you did, I guess share some thoughts on what you think that might happen this year with him. And if not, we can kind of keep it moving.
All right, so we're going to start off first with a shout out. Coach Andy Wimberg, who's now in PR out, I think, at Coors in Denver. But at one point, he was trying to be a basketball coach, and he coached 2 young players at Cardinal Pacelli on the same team. One was named CJ Frederick. The other was named Miles McBride, who's now in the NBA. So, yes, that was a grade school basketball team. Yeah, I would imagine they didn't lose too many games. So I went to Pacelli. Frederick was in like 2nd grade when I was in 8th grade or whatever it may be. No, that can't be right. There's no way he's 24. If he is, kudos to staying in college that long. I wish I was in college till I was 24, but he may actually be 24 with all the transfers and everything. So I think he was 6-7 years younger than me. So I've heard his name for forever. He went to Moeller for a minute, transferred to Covcath. I watched his state championship game when they played Scott County. I was covering the Cardinals and Michael Marino and company for LAX 18 at the time. So he's always been a really good player. Went to Iowa and lit it up. I'm talking like 48% from threes on volume. Was incredible. And if the Cats can get that version of CJ Frederick, then they are in business. I think it's a match made in heaven. Wes Miller just seems like the whisperer for these guys, that if they have had struggles in the past, like Kentucky's a tough place to go and play. There's just tons of media expectations. You get hurt a few times. The fan base, some of the fan base, I should say, starts turning on you. I don't think Cincy's the same way. I think it's a good place to revitalize a career, although we haven't seen it a ton in the past, I guess you could say. I mean, Kyle Washington is a good example of someone that came into Cincy, they embraced him, and had a huge senior season. Kane Broom, I guess you could say, was the same way, but he was incredible at Sacred Heart, so that's not really the same situation. But I do think that Frederick can come in and at least be serviceable, give them what they need, which isn't – he's not going to be their bona fide star, but he's someone that can knock down 3 threes in a row, have Fifth Third Arena rocking with Kansas in the house or with Iowa State in the house, whoever it may be, and really flip the momentum and knock down free throws. I mean, that's been such an issue for Cincy dating back to the Huggins era, just knocking down timely free throws late. And you know that you're going to get 85, 90% from CJ Frederick. I just did want one more word on Wes Miller, because you asked about the letter grade and how he's doing, if he's going to be on the hot seat. I don't think he can't be fired after this year unless John Brannon allegations develop. He can't be fired. I think he can be on the hot seat after the end of this year. If his 2 players are ineligible and he brought them in to, help them win in the Big 12 and they can't play, and the freshmen just aren't good, and you don't see signs of light for the next couple of years, and the players that he already has don't take that step, Josh Reed, Dan Skillings, they're just whatever in the Big 12, and they go 9-24, he's on the hot seat. I'm getting, I don't have forever. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. I'm a Bearcats fan. I want to watch a winner. I'm not giving the guy 10 years because he looks like a politician and says all the right things. I love Wes. I think he's wonderful for the program. He says everything you want to hear. He's recruiting the right type of players. The guys love him. But we need to see success on the floor. Losing to Xavier every year, losing to Houston by 15 every time and not covering the spread when Chucky McBuckets has money on the spread, that's not going to cut it. Losing to Memphis every time, not going to cut it. His big win right now is Central Florida on the road. That's not going to cut it to me. So he's got to win some games this year, and I think he's going to do that.
Yeah, he certainly feels like a guy that has huge upside, Wes Miller does, and it's also somebody that always names gets brought up anytime there was a big job. Almost hilariously, right when he took the job at UC, Wes Miller's name was rumored for some other big job. And it's like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's see what kind of job he does at UC before he moves on. UC now, maybe the biggest thing that I would take away from the opportunity that exists at that university is that, yes, I think there's always stepping stone jobs. There's no doubt about it. But the relevancy of that job now, I think it could lend itself to some longevity with some coaches. I know that Fickell just left. Perhaps that he obviously knew he was going to the Big 12, but I thought that Fickell kind of seen what the cupboard was bearing and realized he had a payday to get made, and he decided to take the payday, and good for him in Wisconsin. I think he has just as good of a chance at Wisconsin to win the Big 10 as he does at UC to win the Big 12, so I don't know how big of an advantage he actually has at Wisconsin. I know people will argue that, but my main point is the elevation of going to the Big 12 can't be understated. It's going to be great for this city. It's going to be great for us at Chatterbox. It's going to be great for you. You're going to get to watch really good basketball almost all year long, conference game after conference game after conference game against good opponents. That has not been something that UC in general athletics have had in years and years and years. So I'm excited that you're on our platform, Chucky Buckets. Let me tell you something. If you have not done this, please do me a favor. Go download the Chatter on all podcast platforms. It is a funny podcast. I don't mean to do that in front of people. I don't like to humor them. I don't like to tell them how good they are in front of their face like I am doing the Chucky Buckets here. Houdini's the one that carries the load on that podcast. He's the funny guy. Chucky just he just turns the lights on. He turns the microphones on. He keeps
I steer the ship, man. I'm the boat captain. I steer the ship through the rocky seas. Houdini comes in, says whatever he wants, and he rubs off just enough on me to take off my to turn the big J into a lowercase J for a half hour or so. And the last thing I want to say, Trace, thanks for having me on the show. I am so excited. You have no idea. More excited than anything in my entire life, second probably to my wedding day, that I will never again see East Carolina on a Cincinnati Bearcats schedule. Thank God. Thank God. I was so tired of playing that team.
All right. Well, shout out to, I think they're called the Pirates, but nonetheless to them. Thank you for coming on the show, Chuck.
Pirates. Thanks, Trace.
Best of luck with the Bearcats moving forward, and then, of course, the Chatter.